Mail theft isn't just petty, it's a federal crime. I learned that the hard way when an HOA cop decided my mailbox was his personal evidence locker. But he had no idea the postal inspector was watching every move he made. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. It all started when envelopes began vanishing from my mailbox. Not junk mail either. Important documents. Bills, a small package from my sister, and even a birthday card from my mom that had cash inside. At first, I thought it was coincidence or maybe even a delivery error. But when it happened 3 weeks in a row, I knew something was off. What made me suspicious was the timing. Every single time mail went missing, the so-called HOA cop, a self-appointed enforcer who strutted around in a black vest with HOA cop stitched across it, was nearby. He acted like he was patrolling the neighborhood, but I'd see him loitering by driveways, checking doors, and sometimes just standing around my mailbox. I confronted him once. "Lose something?" he asked, smirking as I rifled through an empty box where a package should have been. "Yeah, half my deliveries," I shot back. He shrugged, hands resting on his belt like he was real law enforcement. "Maybe the Postal Service just doesn't like you." That sarcastic line sealed it. I knew he was behind it. But here's the thing. Under 18 U.S. Code 1708, stealing mail is a federal offense punishable by up to 5 years in prison. And I wasn't about to let some wannabe cop play games with my life. I tried catching him myself, waiting behind my curtains with my phone camera ready. But he was careful. He'd walk by, glance around, and only strike when nobody was looking. My recordings never caught him in the act. That's when I realized I needed bigger backup. And not the HOA board, they were useless, always covering for their cop. Instead, I went to the United States Postal Inspection Service, the oldest federal law enforcement agency in America. Their agents handle everything from mail fraud to identity theft. When I showed them my stack of missing mail complaints and explained my suspicions, one inspector leaned forward and asked me a simple question. "Do you want to set up a sting?" My heart jumped. "You mean bait him?" The inspector smiled. "Exactly, but legally, with federal evidence. If he's been stealing, we'll catch him." That night, I couldn't sleep. Part of me was nervous. What if the HOA cop realized I'd gone over his head? But the other part of me was burning with anticipation. This wasn't just about missing packages anymore. It was about proving that no one, not even a fake badge-wearing enforcer, was above the law. And soon the trap would be set. The postal inspector didn't waste time. Within days, he called me back with a plan. "We're going to plant a package," he explained. "It'll look like ordinary mail, but it's tagged. If your HOA cop touches it, we'll have him on federal charges." Hearing that gave me a rush. Finally, someone with real authority was taking this seriously. Inspector Lopez walked me through the setup. This wasn't some amateur bait job. It was a controlled delivery. The Postal Inspection Service prepared a plain, padded envelope, slipped a GPS tamper sensor inside, and coordinated the delivery with a postal carrier on a specific route and time. The envelope would arrive just like any other piece of mail. The moment someone interfered with chain of custody, it would create an electronic record the feds could use in court. I was never asked to put the package in my mailbox. Lopez handled the logistics and the legal chain of evidence protocols. On the day of the delivery, I kept the cameras rolling. I'd added a couple of angles to the driveway and mailbox, cloud backups clicking like a second heartbeat. The plan was simple: a normal-looking envelope, a normal delivery, and watch. If the HOA cop touched it, the GPS would trace him. If he walked away with it, the tamper sensor would register. Either way, it wasn't going to be his word against mine. At 7:42 a.m., the mail truck rolled past and the carrier did his route. 10 minutes later, my camera pinged me. Motion at the curb. The HOA cop's posture was the same swagger I'd seen before. Vest on, lanyard clacking. He paused at my mailbox, glanced both ways, then slipped the envelope into his bag like it was nothing more than junk. The tracker lit up on Lopez's monitor. "Pick up at 7:52 a.m., vehicle heading east." Lopez moved quietly, then called the local PD to coordinate a stop. But they didn't need to rush. The GPS showed the suspect pull into a cul-de-sac, then step into a house with the envelope in hand. The inspectors tailed him from a distance, radioing every move. When he opened the envelope on his porch, the tamper sensor showed a breach. Lopez gave the go-ahead. Local officers moved in. The guy tried every lie in the book. Welfare check, mistaken delivery. I was just checking on it. The laminated lanyard clipped to his vest looked cheap under the streetlight. His ID was a photocopy. The officers read him his rights. When they searched his truck, the notebooks came out. Lists of addresses, entry times, and scribbled notes like high value pickups. Envelopes identical to the one we'd used were stacked in the trunk. Lopez explained the charges as he bagged evidence: theft of United States mail under 18 USC 1708, illegal possession of mail, and conspiracy. The notebook tied him to a larger pattern. The GPS timestamps and tamper logs gave the federal case an unbroken chain of custody. The local officers were stunned at how organized it looked. This wasn't a lone porch pirate. It was a systematic scheme. Neighbors streamed out in bathrobes, phones recording. The HOA cop's swagger dissolved into a man answering questions under flashlight glare. The postal inspection team coordinated follow-up, subpoenas for the notebooks, calls to other potential victims, and a forensic pull of the suspect's phone. Lopez told me quietly, "We'll expand this if the evidence points that way. We already have probable cause." By evening, the suspect was in federal custody, and the first wave of subpoenas was on its way. The envelope that started this had done its job. It turned a pattern of petty theft into a criminal investigation with airtight electronic proof. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe because the story is only going to get better. The fallout hit faster than I expected. By the next HOA meeting, whispers had turned into open muttering. People weren't just talking about mail going missing anymore, they were talking about federal charges. When the news broke that our so-called HOA cop had been arrested by postal inspectors, the neighborhood was buzzing. Parents clutched their mailboxes like lifelines. Nobody laughed it off this time. The inspectors confirmed it. He was being charged under 18 USC 1708, theft of U.S. mail. That carries up to 5 years in federal prison and hefty fines. And because the notebooks in his truck tied him to dozens of addresses, the prosecutor added conspiracy and obstruction charges. Suddenly, it wasn't a petty theft case. It was a full federal indictment. Neighbors started realizing just how deep the rot went. A couple down the street admitted their bank statements never showed up. Another family had a missing insurance check. The HOA cop hadn't just targeted me, he'd been running a quiet racket through the entire neighborhood, using his fake authority as cover. When the HOA board tried to downplay it, the inspectors released part of the evidence: texts linking him directly to Therese Tremblay, our HOA president. She'd been coaching him, telling him which houses to monitor, and even justifying it as enforcing dues collection. At first, Therese denied it flat out, but when the subpoenaed texts were read aloud in a hearing, her face went pale. She hadn't just let it happen, she'd ordered it. The law didn't give her any wiggle room. Mail theft is a strict liability crime. You can't say I was doing my job or I didn't know. It's federal property the moment it lands in your box. And under 18 USC 2, aiding and abetting a federal crime carries the same penalty as committing it yourself. Therese was charged as a co-conspirator. The HOA scrambled to distance themselves. Within a week, an emergency vote was called. Therese was removed as president by unanimous decision, her name stripped from every ledger and notice board. Homeowners filed a civil suit against her personally, citing fraud, abuse of power, and emotional distress. The county clerk confirmed she also faced state charges for impersonation and harassment, stacked on top of the federal counts. Meanwhile, the HOA cop sat in federal custody, bail denied because of the sheer amount of evidence against him. Lopez told me privately, "This guy won't see daylight for a while. The feds want to make an example." Neighbors who once cowered at the HOA's fines started talking openly. Stories of bogus violations, inspection fees, and intimidation piled up. What started as one man stealing letters cracked the whole scam wide open. Within a month, the HOA's legal representation resigned, citing conflicts of interest. By the end of the quarter, the association itself was placed under state investigation for corruption and fraud. As for me, I didn't care about the stolen bills anymore. What mattered was the look on Therese's face when the badge she used to scare us with meant nothing. No amount of HOA bluster could compete with federal law. I stepped out to check my mailbox one crisp morning, and for the first time in months, I felt no anxiety. Just the quiet click of the hinge, the rustle of envelopes that belonged to me and only me. And that's when I realized they thought they ran this neighborhood with fake rules and intimidation. But in the end, it only took one sting to remind them, you don't mess with federal law.